What is going on, guys? Noah Brewer here, back again with part 6 of the Q4 Spark series. And I honestly considered just skipping this one and leaving it out, but I figured since we just went over how to start a test campaign, a lot of you guys are probably going to be bugging out about vanity metrics when you're analyzing your ads. So here we have the video about why vanity metrics are bullshit and what you should pay attention to instead. So vanity metrics are basically your CPM, your CPC, your click-through rate, these types of metrics that basically show you certain statistics based on how much you're paying on average for a specific metric. Now, CPM is kind of like the average cost to reach 1,000 people. Cost per click is the average cost that you're paying for someone to view your website. And click-through rate is the percentage of people that are actually clicking on your ad to go to your website. Now, without naming names, certain leaders in the industry have painted the picture of vanity metrics being super important to your success, and they're just not, and it's very, very confusing to the average advertiser. They'll say things like, oh, a CPM over $10 is terrible, or any cost per click above $1 is a horrible number, and you should turn the ad off immediately. And these lies lead you to think that if you have any of these metrics, that either your ad is actually shitty and you need to go out and test a new ad, or your website is not performing the way that it should be. And let me be the first one to tell you the truth about these vanity metrics and how to actually use them to succeed, and don't pay attention to, all this bullshit like, oh, $10 CPMs are bad, because it's not true. Let me tell you what's actually good and bad right now. Anything profitable is good and anything unprofitable is bad. Now, what I mean when I say this is people will say like any CPM above $10 is bad, but what if your CPM is $20 but you have like a 5 ROAS? Is that still bad? And the answer is no. And it doesn't mean that your ads aren't good. It doesn't mean that your product's not good. It's literally just an average number for how much you're paying to reach 1,000 people. There's no good or bad when it comes to vanity metrics, because the good is what's profitable and the bad is what's unprofitable. Let me elaborate. I got into a fairly heated Twitter debate not too long ago about how vanity metrics don't matter and CPMs and cost per clicks and click-through rates don't really matter. And the reason I know this is because I've actually scaled a lot of different stores. I've been in a lot of different scenarios where, yes, of course, some of the stores that I've scaled have had amazing CPMs, like $3 CPMs, $2 CPMs, and great click-through rates. But I've also scaled stores that have $20 CPMs, $30 CPMs that were profitable the entire time. How do you explain that to somebody who is out here saying like, oh, anything above a $10 CPM is bad? So if you went into that store with that mindset and you had a $20 CPM, what are you gonna do? Turn it off because it's a $20 CPM, but you're still profitable? Like, we could have scaled that store to 6 figures, and you're gonna sit here and tell me that you're gonna turn it off because the CPM is over $10? Really? These guys just don't know what they're talking about. Vanity metric implies that the metric is just for show, and it does not take into account our actual goal or what we actually want. Now, if your goal was to reach as many people for as cheap as possible, then yes, CPM is going to matter. But if you're watching this channel and you're like me, our goal is to make money. So if your goal is to make money, the CPM does not matter. And honestly, when you look at it with this mindset, you could argue that a higher CPM is actually better if you're profitable. And the reason is because a CPM is basically your average cost to reach 1,000 people. So let's say that you had a $10 CPM, which in their book is like a bad CPM or whatever. That means that your cost to reach 10,000 people would be a total of $100. So you're basically spending $100 on ads and you're reaching 10,000 people. Let's say that you had a 3 ROAS, which would essentially mean that you spent $100, reached 10,000 people, and you did $300 in sales. Let's take the same example with the same ROAS, same amount spent, but let's cut the CPM in half. So all the numbers are the same. So in the first example, we had a $10 CPM, 10,000 people reached, $100 spent, and $300 made back. So basically a 3 ROAS and a $10 CPM. Now, let's say that we had a $5 CPM, and this time we still spent $100 and we still made $300 back. We would have to reach 20,000 people to make the same amount of money. So this is the argument. Basically saying that a higher CPM is actually better because let's say that you had a total audience size of 1 million people. out of that 1 million people, if you're able to be more profitable on a higher CPM, you are going to make net more money than the person that has a lower CPM with the same profitability based on that CPM, because in order to make the same amount of money with the lower CPM, you have to reach double the amount of people, which essentially means that out of the same million people in that audience, you're gonna make half the money just because you have a lower CPM, even if the ROAS and everything else was the same. Now, I know that that example was hella confusing. I even had to take a second to do some math, but when you work it out like this, it starts to make sense why you shouldn't really pay attention to these metrics, because people will blindly say that, anything above a $10 CPM is bad or $5 CPM is bad. These metrics are bad, but they don't even write it down and look at the actual numbers and realize that in certain scenarios, when your goal is to make money, sometimes a higher CPM is actually better as long as the ROAS and all the other metrics are similar. There are actually two real reasons why I will actually look at vanity metrics when I'm making decisions, when I'm analyzing an ad account or a campaign or a product test. Only two, and they're very, very specific, and honestly, only one of them really matters, as we'll go into. Number one, deliverability issues. So sometimes advertising platforms will give you abnormally high CPM or CPC for whatever reason. Maybe it's just hitting a bad pocket of audience, or maybe you did something wrong and the ad got flagged and it's just penalizing you. There's many reasons why deliverability issues happen. Number one thing, this is only relevant if you have other campaigns to compare it to. So let's say that you're making campaigns and normally you see like a $7 CPM, and then one day you make a campaign and you have like a $40 CPM. You can look at that $40 CPM and safely assume that you're having deliverability issues because the CPM is abnormally higher than it normally is. This is one of the only situations where I will actually use vanity metrics to determine if I'm doing something right or not. Honestly, it's not even that big of a deal. If you are in that type of scenario where you get a $40 CPM when you're normally getting 6 or 7, all you need to do is just recreate the campaign, and usually that fixes whatever deliverability issues that you're having. And like I said, it happens for whatever reason. Usually you'll never figure it out. It just happens sometimes. Number two is determining if you actually have bad ads, or if you actually have a bad product, or if you actually have a bad website. Now, I brought this up earlier as it being a bullshit metric, but it's a bullshit metric for me, right? Because I know that the products I'm testing are good based on my experience. I know that the video ads that I'm running are good because I have similar style video ads working with other products. I know that my website's good, so I don't really need to question if those things are good or not, because I have currently, profitable stores with similar structures. But for you, vanity metrics could be a legitimate way for you to determine if your ad is bad or your website is bad or your product is bad, any of these things. But again, it's not a determining factor. And one thing that I need you to keep in mind that kind of sort of combats this point, it combats the point that I'm making, and I'm aware of it. And this is why I say take it with a grain of salt. Like, if you have a bad click-through rate, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a bad ad. Let me elaborate. One thing to keep in mind is that if your ad has a bad cost per click, it also has to have a varying CTR and a varying CPM. So a bad CPM is basically a result of a low click-through rate or a high CPM, or both. So there's other metrics that you're not 100% in control of that also affect these things. AKA, if you have like a 30% click-through rate, it could be considered a bad click-through rate if your CPM was a penny, right? So you really have to pay attention to all three of these metrics if you want each of them to make sense. I've seen ads that have a 26% click-through rate, but the CPM was like $10 to $20. So even though the click-through rate was arguably very good, the quality of the traffic could have just been very good as well, because it was so expensive. And if you're paying more for your traffic, aka if your CPM is higher, you should expect a higher click-through rate out of that. Bottom line of this video is, if you're running paid ads with the goal of making money, then focus on the money that your ads actually generate and not these vanity metrics, because there's a lot of factors at play that you're not 100% in control of. And click-through rate can balance out CPM, and CPM can balance out click-through rate. So a lot of it doesn't even matter at the end of the day. And if you were in my mentoring program, then you wouldn't be worried about if your ads are bad or your website is bad or your products are bad, because I review those things for all of my students and make sure that they're following a proven method just like I do with all of my other students to find winning products products with them. So one of the problems when looking at vanity metrics is obviously you're not confident in what you're doing. You don't think that your ad is good enough for whatever reason, and joining my mentorship solves that problem. So if you want to get in that, join using the link in the description. You can fill out the application, or you can send me a DM on Instagram over here, and I like to get back to people pretty quickly. So that's pretty much it for this video. Like I said, I'm glad that I got this message out there. I just got into a heated debate about it, but if you like videos like this, leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want more videos like this, and look forward to the next video in the Q4 Spark series, because it's going to be an absolute banger, and we're going to be getting into scaling soon. So I hope you guys are excited for that as well. That's pretty much it for this video. This is Noah Brewer, and I'm out. Peace.